Hey, what's going on, guys? This is the third episode of Two Shiv's League of Legends podcast. I am Dinks. Hosting with me again is Vastilent. How you doing, Vasty?
Doing awesome. Today is a good day.
We've been working on getting new equipment all week, last couple weeks, trying to make every podcast a little bit better. So hopefully you guys can tell a difference, especially on Vast's end. I think you got some sexy new toys, didn't you?
Oh yeah, got a new mic stand, so I don't have my mic sitting on the table anymore, and I got myself a pop filter to make everything sound a bit more crisp, wafer crisp.
Wafer crisp, love it. That's great. And so last week we talked a little bit about the South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, which is where we're from. We are in Austin, Texas. South by Southwest is coming up this weekend, and we are going to be down there at the IPL All-Star Game.
Yep, that's correct. On March 10th, this Sunday, we're going to be at the IPL All-Star Game at the Screenburn Arcade. They're going to have a lot of pro players there, judged from the polls that they held on the website. Whoever the players pick to be there, who's going to end up showing up. So it'll be like a ragtag team of pros. It should be really fun. We're going to have a photographer there now, actually, so that we can get some professional grade photos. Before, we were just looking at taking pictures for their cell phones, and that was just not a very good idea. So now we have a professional photographer, Josh Behrens. He's going to be coming out there to take some photos for us, and hopefully you guys will be able to see us meet the players.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We didn't get to go last year. Of course, this organization was not formed then, but I cannot wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so, again, going off of the feedback, if you guys have listened to the first podcast and the second podcast, we do a lot of solo queue discussions, some changes with champion balances, maybe some new items that we're seeing. And to kick it off, we are going to talk about Blade of the Rune King. This thing is getting all the hype. I know Riot did some hot fixing earlier. I think it was this week, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. This week. The biggest thing with Blade of the Rune King pre-nerf was basically it was a response to the health meta with the 5% damage on hit, and then of course the use. It has a lot of utility in a single item. It gives everything that an AD carry would want, and even after post-nerf, it's still extremely powerful. They increased the gold amount there, and also decreased the on-use effect, but it's still very, very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did numerous, I don't know I guess I know what Riot was thinking about when they created this item. It's with the health meta that was going on, people picking up Giant's Belt, like really aggressive junglers like we talked about last week, Hecarim, Zinzao, Vi, Jarvan would rush health and be able to do all sorts of crazy things for their team. Turret diving very early, snowballing their lanes, and they had Warmogs was built on like every champ, AP's mid, top, jungle, whatever it was. Warmogs was just ludicrously popular. And I think, Blade of the Rune King is kind of a response to that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think it was a good thing because the health was getting a bit out of control. However, I do think that the pre-hot fix, it was just insanely powerful. Every single person that you saw was picking it up. You had your top, your jungle, your AD carry. Anyone that could take benefit from it was definitely picking it up. And we still see that now, but I feel like there's a little bit more of a choice between, a little bit more decision-making between getting Bloodthirster or getting Blade of the Rune King. It's definitely a very versatile item, especially with building out of Bilgewater Cutlass, which is an extremely strong early-game item.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of AD carries, there are a couple of different building paths, since Season 1 especially, and since later in Season 2, ADs would start with, Doran's Blade in Season 1, and then it got to be Season 2, it was like Boots, 3 health pot, and now you see any variety of those with the added Longsword and 2 health pot. You see it's kind of an all over the place thing, and people would rush Vamp Scepter in lane, get double Dorans and Vamp Scepter, 1 Vamp Scepter, 1 Dorans, whatever you did, and give you that kind of that sustain for those early trades, being able to stay in lane longer, farm longer, trade better, and Bilgewater Cutlass built out of Vamp Scepter, so it's just like a natural path for them to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a perfect transition item, and even having the use on the Bilgewater Cutlass, I think it gives you still get the slow effect right off of it.
Yeah, you do the activated.
So, I mean, even that is pretty impressive in lane whenever you're going for a gank. It helps assist your jungler. If you're an AD carry without any sort of slow or CC, it kind of gives you a little bit extra to kind of ensure that you're going to get that gank. And of course, like you were saying with the Vamp Scepter, that early life steal helps with a lot of sustain, especially with people picking up some more, offish supports that don't necessarily have a heal.
Yeah, absolutely, and which is actually pretty popular. I know you see a lot of people. Of course, you have like Sona, Soraka, what's it called? Who's the other one?
Man, I can't think of his name right now. The ghostly fella.
Well, we don't know our champions, but anywho, yeah, if it's not taking a heal in lane, people like to run those really CC heavy support tanky type supports like Leona or Nunu for the attack speed. They don't have any sustain themselves, so they rely on chain CCing, especially with a jungler, to get a kill in lane. But in those long, drawn-out fights, like if you take something like, Caitlyn Sona or something that just has a lot of safe harass, and a heal in lane, you can simply lose the lane just by being pushed out. And so taking that early Vamp Scepter allows you to stay in lane much longer if you're smart with your mana, and stick with those. You can take that bursty, more CC-heavy supports and play against a sustain lane and do just fine.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Vamp Scepter in its own right gives you a really great trading ability, just because you have the AD and now you have the lifesteal as well. So whenever you're trading, you're chunking people and getting health back from it. And because of this whole build path into Blade of the Ruined King, it's kind of opened up new items, like I was talking about earlier. It's kind of taken away Warmogs from the must-have pick for health. The two items that come to mind now are Locket of the Iron Solari and Sunfire Cape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's when they did the big item change, the start of season 3, they added a lot of stuff. They changed the recipes for several things. I mean, that automatically made a lot of different champs viable in roles that they hadn't been previously. And there's been a couple different build paths for even those aggressive jungles like we were talking about last week with like Xin Zhao or Jarvan. Like some of them will go pure damage and they'll still do like Trinity Force, or that sort of like hybrid tanky, but more on the aggressive side, kind of squishier, big damage dealing. But then the alternate side of that is that they go for more of a support role and they do things like Locket of the Iron Solari and just act as more of they set up kills for their lanes. And just those little bubbles allow them to engage or disengage and get out safely.
Yeah, definitely. And, in my opinion, I definitely think that Warmogs is on its way out. I know a lot of people, especially in my ELO bracket, they still think that Warmogs is this extremely powerful item. And, it's definitely good. It's not a bad item in any way, shape, or form. But the biggest things is that with Blade of the Ruined King getting so big, resistance is sort of making a comeback. People aren't rushing, dang it, I can't remember the name, Black Cleaver like they used to. Instead, they're rushing they're rushing Blade instead. And with Locket of the Iron Solari, for example, you're getting armor on that, you're getting CDR, you're getting health, you're getting all these things that are going to help you negate the damage. Not to mention the team shield that you get, which in my opinion is extremely impressive. It scales with the level, so it's an item that gets more powerful as the game progresses. It's really good, especially if you're looking at someone pops Ignite on you, and then you can just pop the shield on Iron Solari, and everything is okay. It definitely gives you an oh shit button, so to say. Like, it saves your ass, no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our items in general have been super, super underrated for a long time. Actually, this is like the most aura items that we're seeing in a while. Season 2, there was a while there where there were like no aura items, like you just wouldn't buy them. Some supports might rush it, but most of them didn't. But then you got things like when Reverie got big or Zeke's got big, and support started building those to really give their AD carry a little extra oomph in lane.
Mm-hmm.
They got really, really popular, sort of aggressive, supporty activated items. And now we're seeing these activated items in a more defensive, still support way, but you're seeing it on not just support's bottom, you're seeing it on junglers, and you're seeing it on top laners. Because a lot of champs, especially ones that do like % damage, or are building items like Blade of the Ruined King that allow them to build tanky and then do % based damage. You see them building more of sort of a support role. You know what I mean? You see like Jarvan's building Locket of the Iron Solari, even in a solo lane. You see Olaf's building Locket of the Iron Solari. Because their kit allows them to like dive on an AD carry and sit with them, and their goal is just simply to survive or give their team a little bit of sustain in the team fights.
Yeah, and that early CDR on the what is the little fireball health item called? The thing that builds in the Iron Locket?
Oh, the cooldown one?
Yeah.
Kindle Gem?
Yeah, the Kindle Gem. That in my opinion is an amazing. Yeah, we remembered something. Oh my god. That item in particular is amazing in my opinion. It's very cheap and you get CDR from it, health and CDR. It's really good for a lot of top laners, supports, and jungles. It kind of gives you everything that you need. It's a really nice little packaged item for sure. And the fact that it builds into something extremely useful, not just for supports anymore, but for everyone else, opens up the possibilities for that item a lot. Basically, Kindle Gem is to top laners as Vamp Scepter is to AD carries now.
Yeah, absolutely, and junglers too. You see it on all sorts of people, and it's not just reserved for like supporting type jungles, like like Maokai, right? Like Maokai's a lot of fun. He has fast clearing time. He's really aggressive. But he's not like the jungle that would gank you and kill you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he couldn't do anything on his own.
Yeah, but you partner him with someone that has CC or someone with kill potential, and he's like super, super, super dangerous, and he's really annoying. And you'll see him rush that CDR early so that he can just lane gank constantly. And spam his knockback, spam his root, things like that. Plus it makes him tanky, and like you said, it's super cheap.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that super cheap idea, that's kind of what we're sitting at with Sunfire Cape. It's just now getting a lot of attention. I know it's been a picked up item in the past, of course, but I feel like right now it's getting a lot of attention since Warmog's nerf. And an interesting thing to know about is that a couple patches ago they decreased the cost on Sunfire Cape, but didn't reduce any of its stats. And it's extremely useful because now you've got health, you've got armor, and the AoE damage effect on it really helps a lot of champions that struggle pushing lanes. It helps them push. Shin comes to mind when thinking about that.
Right. So I mean, is that so? I guess like back to Blade of the Ruined King, because that's all the hype right now. You're seeing it build on a ton of like traditional carries and bringing actually past carries that were very popular, like Tristana, for example. Hugely popular in Season 1. You'd watch all these big tournaments and you would see like Kog'Maw and Tristana picked all the time because they scale so well into the late game and they have a lot of harass, they do a lot of damage and relatively safe lane or range. And like when Blade came out, all of a sudden I'm seeing Tristana everywhere. And she hits really hard, and she has that damage output. She has the range to sustain that damage, and she's just super, super scary. So do you think that resistances, or I guess health and resistance items, are an answer to Blade?
Absolutely. On the resistance side, I was really concerned talking in our last podcast about how with Black Cleaver and Landria's Torment. I always forget.
Oh, Landry's, yeah.
Yeah, Landria's Torment, like, those items pretty much destroyed resistance altogether. It made the gold efficiency of your resistance items, very, you didn't want them. Because as soon as you bought it, you weren't getting your gold's worth out of it. So with people rushing something other than Armor Pen and Magic Pen, it's definitely a very good answer to that item. I feel like that's exactly what's going to kill Warmogs now. It's just people are going to start building resistance more. You pick up a Sunfire Cape, you pick up the Iron Locket, and all of a sudden you have utility, health, and resistance. You have everything. Whereas Warmogs was just very simple, a big chunk of health and health regen.
Which actually was nerfed recently. So, right. And a lot of people don't think that's a lot, but I mean, people that got Warmogs early in lane, people like Garen or something that would get Warmogs and simply beat you because they out-sustained you, was really annoying. And I think it went from like 1.5% regen to 1, I believe.
Yeah, they nerfed it by 0.5.
Yeah, so I mean, that's like 25%. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, it used to be like you had a constant health pot going. It was very, very annoying.
More than 25.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, yeah, that's, and so when they, Warmogs was, and this hasn't happened very many times in the game when an item just got to be so out of control that, Riot had to step in and like fix this thing quickly because you're seeing like really random items built on, like you see Katarinas with Warmogs still getting pentakills. Like that shouldn't happen ever. You know what I mean? And they did this, like, the last time I could think of this was like season 1 when they nerfed Sunfire Cape, because Sunfire Cape used to, the passive on it, the where it would do AoE damage to people around you,
It was
used to not,
stackable.
yeah, it used to not be unique. And it was the dumbest thing because, again, you'd have like Garen would get like 3 Sunfire Capes and would just spin into your team and do massive damage, pop courage, and like you couldn't kill him ever, and he would just completely wreck you. And that's kind of how the Warmogs thing was. You know, it wasn't quite as much killing power as Sunfire Cape, but it was just such a problem. And it was so strong, and people found out it was so strong that, you know, carries, not bruiser carries, but AD carries and AP carries would like build it. And, you know, I think you're right. I think these percentage-based items are a great answer to that. And it's very hard for Riot to like balance between like resistance items and health items, you know. And so I think these like sort of hybrid, you know, get 200 health plus 50 AP and a little bit of armor, like those kind of hybrid items are going to be what you want to build.
Yeah, and the comment I have to make about all of these changes with health and percent damage is I feel like whenever Warmogs was like really popular there for a while and everyone was building it, it kind of slowed down the pace of team fights, and I felt like it made people make better decisions and be more skillful because the team fights were longer and you had more decisions to make. Now with Blade of the Ruin King, it feels like team fights go so fast, like everyone just gets bursted down and dies instantly. So I feel like there's, I don't know, maybe this introduces, you know, more of a skill because it's not as forgiving as it was whenever you just had a ton of health and you could just run at people. But it just seems like team fights are so fast right now, and maybe that's just in solo queue, I'm not sure. I'll have to see the way it goes now that Blade has been nerfed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still like, I think it's still crazy strong item, and the thing is that you're not just seeing 1 per team. You're seeing like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to be, you know, the nerf, you know, I mean, it's a nerf, but it's still, the item's crazy strong, and I don't think it's going to really affect it at all. Because, you know, it makes the team fights very quickly. It makes getting caught super unforgiving. It rewards people that are able to position themselves correctly. AD carries with long range that are able to stay at, you know, kite and have the team peel for them and things are going to maximize that item's usage. Stay full health, just completely destroy the front line of the opposing team. And at the same time, it also makes Baron fights like really, really unpredictable because, you know, you can sneak a Baron if you've got 2 or 3 Blade of the Ruin Kings on that team. You know, you can have like random people tank it and you can just completely crush it in no time, and it makes it hard for the other team, especially if they're not wording. Or they're not wording correctly. Like, you can sneak a Baron super easy with 2 or 3 Blade of the Ruin Kings on the same team.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the biggest things they nerfed actually was I think they reduced that percent damage to neutral monsters by quite a bit. So I'm not sure if it's still in effect. I haven't really noticed. I haven't been really paying attention to Barons and Dragons and objectives since they nerfed Blade of the Ruin King, but I definitely know exactly what you were talking about before with people just being able to sneak them in because doing so much massive damage to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the cost is super low. And for all of you that forget, that item has an activate that's like, I don't know, retarded strong. The item is like cheap to build. The stats are great. It gives you, you know, attack speed, AD, and isn't there a third stat on it?
Attack speed, AD, and lifesteal.
Yeah, what am I thinking? Yeah, lifesteal. And it does percentage damage. But then the activate actually like saps a certain amount of their health, I think, right? It's for percentage of their max health.
Right, so if you use that like on a bruiser or a tank, you're like getting a big chunk of health. They nerfed that by 5% too, I believe. But it's still like 10% of the target's maximum HP, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it makes all of you that like to play bruisers and initiators and like jump on the AD carry and completely annihilate them, like it sucks to be you because that item shreds your health, and it if you pop on an AD carry, and there's a couple people out there like Hecarim or whatever that can like stick on an AD carry and really, really sit on them and really force the team. It's like a global taunt. The team has to get you off of them. Like, this item kind of counters that because it's going to, no matter how tanky you are, it's going to like shield the AD carry or heal them or whatever it is for that much health. And that AD carry is going to steal, I think, 30% of your move speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it just makes it like so much harder to jump on an AD carry and actually stick to them and actually kill them. And all of that in one item that's still actually, like, I think, relatively cheap for all the stats it gives you. Like, it's just super strong.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I completely forgot about the slow, to be honest. That completely introduces something entirely new. Because I mean, even if you do happen to get to the AD carry, like you were saying, it's going to be impossible to stick to them, especially with all the other crowd control effects and everything else that's kind of going on around you.
Well, it just forces your team or you to have hard CC.
Yep.
You know, it sort of negates like tanks that would build like Frozen Mallet. They would rush Frozen Mallet and a bunch of health and just run at the AD carry and sit on them the whole game, which was a huge problem. So I mean, I think Blade of the Ruined Kingdom is overpowered, but I also prefer that meta to like the stack health and rush the AD carry, because for a while there it like sucked to be the AD carry. Like it was terrible, especially in solo queue if you're trying to play AD and your team has no idea how to like use exhaust or peel for you. Like, you know, there's numerous bruisers on the other team. If they had it, you're like, oh my god, like this totally sucks. But with this item, you're able to, assuming you can position yourself correctly, you're able to kite them and you're able to do enough damage in a short enough time to actually kill them.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of like brings us to another overpowered item, Ohm Wrecker. Tell me all about that. Tell me all about it.
Well, don't hate us for talking about Ohm Wrecker and vouching that it's not overpowered, but it is not like terrible either. You know, you see, if you've been watching the tournaments, you see some Ohm Wreckers being picked up and everyone kind of like scratches their head and like, you know, checks their TV reception, like make sure like, is that really what I'm seeing? And I played Ohm Wrecker in a couple games the other day, and it really is not that terrible. Like it's a super situational item. But for those of you that don't know, Ohm Wrecker, because there's only been a couple picked I think ever, Chain Vest and Catalyst. Those are the two recipe items, and it's about a 900 gold upgrade. Okay, and the item gives you a bunch of HP, bunch of armor, bunch of mana, and then it has an activate that cancels turret damage for 2.5 seconds with about a 2-minute cooldown. Okay, so obviously this is not an item that you want to rush on everybody, you know, or if you're playing top lane, which is where I typically play it, you don't want to just rush Ohm Wrecker and be like, all right, great, now I can go kill him. Because it only benefits you if you're able to obviously utilize the stats, but utilize the activate, otherwise it's not worth upgrading. But on, you know, a lot of top laners, supports, and jungles actually end up picking up a Chain Vest early in the game anyways. And then those mana-based tankier champs end up picking up a Catalyst. So even if you don't build Ohm Wrecker, you can use those two items to go your normal build route anyways. But if you get into a situation where you're playing a champ that can actually turret dive, and capitalize on kills and get their lanes fed, Ohm Wrecker's activate is super strong.
Yeah, and combine that with not just top lane, but junglers also. The diving potential is insane, especially if you're already snowballing and they're trying to hug turret to keep farming. This basically allows you to completely shut them down. You know, they're not going to be able to farm on turret anymore whenever you're immune to turret damage. So you can just kind of take that snowball effect and drive it home, you know. There's nowhere you can hide.
Well, absolutely, and there's a lot of really interesting statistics out there. If you guys read Reddit or LOL King has some really interesting kind of like pick rate, you know, popularity percentages for champions, win rate, lose rate, things like that. And we were actually looking at Ohm Wrecker as an item, and it's only picked in about 10% of games for a select few champions. But every champion that actually picks this up has an 80% or higher win rate when they pick that item. Okay, and I think that's really interesting, and I think it says a lot about the item. It means that a very select few understand when to get Ohm Wrecker and how to use it. But if you do understand that, you know how to use it, you're going to lose, or I shouldn't say you're going to lose very few games, but if you utilize it correctly, statistics show you're going to win 80% or more of those games. Okay, and like, you know, the champions that utilize this, and it really makes sense for you AP mid players out there, Twisted Fate. This is really, I thought this was like really cool, really interesting, because Twisted Fate, you know, you guys can harass with cards all day long, but, you know, being squishier, it's much more common for you to get your lane opponent really low health, but not be able to finish them off quite yet. And so you always want to like ult onto turret and finish them off. But in a somewhat equal trade, you might be too low. Ohm Wrecker finishes that. You can have Ohm Wrecker, which gives you, you know, mana and armor and all that good stuff. But you can actually ult past the turret, activate it, and you've got 2.5 seconds to finish that other person without taking any damage.
Yeah, which is enough for 2 spells. I mean, that's enough to definitely finish someone off. And kind of like the most infamous fail with Twisted Fates in the first place is like, turret diving and getting killed by a turret because they out-juked you or something,
Yeah.
or you teleported it in too low. So it definitely lets you be a little bit more clever with turret diving.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of strange to take it on a mid because it is a rather expensive item. It's around 3,000 gold, and it doesn't give you AP.
Right.
So I don't recommend it on really anyone but Twisted Fate for a mid character, especially a squishy sort of assassin type carry. But if you were to take it on like a top laner or jungle or a support, this is where we typically see it. I played it on Malphite top. And Malphite's one of those champs that because his ult's very strong, and if you're smart with your abilities in lane, you take Ignite, you can close the gap in a lot of champions top lane and burst them down before they know what's happening. And Malphite, again, is in one of those situations where he can get the top laner really low, but he doesn't have the finishing power because he's melee. So you get into this situation where if you think you can dive him on turret and maybe kill him, but they can kite you around the turret. And a lot of times Malphite will die before he can actually finish him off. Ohmwrecker, again, completely nullifies that. You can dive turret, and you can actually chase them for like 2.5 seconds, and either get out if you can't finish them off, or you get the kill and you get out anyways.
Yeah, and it's funny because in that game that you picked up Ohmwrecker, your team was like calling you bad and stuff for picking up that item, but you were like 5-1. Like you were smashing top lane so hardcore, and the biggest thing, like whenever you're in solo queue, is don't completely destroy people for like exploring new ideals, especially if they're winning. If they're winning, then maybe they've stumbled upon something. This is how you don't just have to watch pro games and watch them do something new. It's okay to kind of like explore and get yourself out there as long as you can logically justify in your brain why you're getting it. Don't pick up some random item that like an Infinity says on Cho'Gath or something because you think it's going to be good. Be able to justify the item in your brain. That way, if your teammates come at you, you can actually give them a logical explanation. And I know logic and solo queue don't really go hand in hand necessarily, but I really think that Ohmwrecker's a good item, and I haven't it's been something I've overlooked until today whenever Dinks brought it up to me. But the biggest thing that stuck out in my mind was thinking about Maokai. And the reason why he comes to mind is because a lot of times whenever you go to lane gank, people will flash to turret, and if you've already hit Twisted Advance, you're going right there with them. And this kind of gives you an opportunity to say, oh, well, I messed up, but hey, it's okay. We can still secure the kill here because I'm going to be immune to 2 turret hits.
Well, and that's people, Maokai is a very scary ganker, and if he ganks a lane that has CC already, it's almost always a guaranteed kill. Uh-huh. And people are like, well, I'll just position myself correctly, and I'll, I have turret. Don't worry about it. I have turret, And like flash baiting Maokai's route into turret is something I do all the time because I typically play mids with CC. I like to play, Zyra, Ahri, Lux, something like that. And so I can like flash into ult, especially early levels, and get a cage off, and it's like an easy first blood. But a Maokai with like an Ohmwrecker, like mid game, just constantly snowballing his team. It's like, wow, okay, I have to flash and like continue to run and zone and like just completely, it makes Maokai that much more scary. And it's the same for like any tanky champs, like Cho'Gath, someone like that can do it. Typically they're tanky enough to go past the turret anyways. But I think the other lane that's really important to note for Ohmwrecker are supports, because a lot of times it's a 2v2 bottom lane. There's a lot of action bottom, and a lot of times the winning lane, assuming they have equal skill level, which rarely happens, but the AD carries are both really low, or the supports are really low, and maybe everyone fights and then both people back off without a kill, or they all 4 die, or something like that. It's usually very close. And getting Ohmwrecker on someone like Taric or Nunu or Blitzcrank gives you a ton of zoning potential and a lot of that opens up a lot of doors for ganking, right? Jungles that can actually gank behind turret. Mm-hmm. Maokai or a Hecarim or something like that can actually walk behind turret, and as a support, you walk to the turret, you nullify its damage, and you guys can just snowball that bottom lane like super, super hard. And that'll lead to, Fed AD carries, that'll lead to dragons, and that just snowballs the game, and you guys can win off of that. And I think that's something super underrated, but these champions and these players that pick these supports and actually get Ohmwrecker have like 90% win rate. And I think that's something to take note of.
Oh, yeah, and one of the biggest things as playing a support. I play a lot of Tarek support bottom whenever I don't get a chance to play top lane or jungle now. And one of the most frustrating things playing Tarek is, you got the opponent like really low, and then they retreat to turret, and just one more auto attack would land you the kill. But it's too early in the game for you to push towards turret and potentially get killed there and give their AD carry a kill. This gives you the opportunity to look past those frustrating points. And not only that, but as a whole, like you were saying earlier, the build path for this item is great. Catalyst is a great item, even on supports. It gives you more lane sustain, not having to worry about hitting up as many potions. And the chainmail, of course, is always going to be really good bottom because you're always playing against an AD carry. So, this just opens up a whole lot more doors and, prevents you from running into these frustrating situations where you can't get the final hit on the AD carry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I said, I don't want to, advocate that everyone should go out and buy Ohm Record no matter what your lane is, because it is a very niche item, and you're not going to be able to just, turret dive for years and, activate Ohm Record, because it does only last 2.5 seconds, and very few champs are going to get into that situation. But I think if you use it correctly, especially on junglers, and, I don't know, especially junglers, that's where I see the biggest potential.
Right.
And some tankier supports. I think that if you play it right and you use it correctly, Ohm Record can be very, very good. Don't bash people that buy it, because if they know what they're doing, they can absolutely win the game for you. Anyways, that's enough about Ohm Record. I think it's really good. I think you guys should explore that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Taric too, because I know that you were saying you play a lot of Taric, and Ohm Record on Taric actually has a really high win rate. So, why do you think that Taric is so effective bottom? Okay, because we were looking at the stats on Taric while kind of led from the Ohm Record stats, and he has actually the second highest win rate percentage-wise right now. It's sitting at 56%. Rumble's first with about 56, and then Taric is 55.8 or something like that. He's been released since 2009, so he's one of the early champs. Super high win rate. He only has a 2% ban rate, which I think is absolutely ludicrous. If a champion is that strong, he's picked that often. What do you think about Taric?
It's really interesting because you very rarely see a champion with such a high win ratio and someone who's constantly picked all the time, and not banned at all. Like you were saying, he has one of the highest win percentages out there. And of course the biggest thing behind him is his hard CC. It's not a skill shot. It's long duration. It's easy to land. And it goes so well with his kit, having armor and heal for his zoning power. He can zone because you're afraid of getting stunned, and then followed up by his AD carry. That alone, it makes him so powerful, just his stun. There's no other support bottom that has a hard CC like that, a ranged hard stun, and coupled with pretty much any AD carry, it's absolutely devastating. The first ones that come to mind, Draven, you're going to get chunked. Getting hit by Draven in general is, sucks, especially if you're forced to take a hit or two. Vayne with the stun condemn combo, that's like a guaranteed kill. There's no way that you're going to live through a stun condemn combo. And I don't know. It's just a stun, I don't even know what else to say.
Yeah, I think Taric would be slightly worse if he only had his stun. You know what I mean? It's definitely he's a tanky champ just naturally, right? His W, his second ability, Shatter, gives him passive armor, makes him really tanky. I think it's an aura, so it makes his AD carry tanky as well. Makes it very hard to trade against them. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he's got a heal, okay, which puts him there's a couple. Really, there might only be one support that really can sit bottom and have that same kind of scary zoning potential. Blitzcrank has a zoning potential, right? But it's you dodge grab, then you can be aggressive. You know what I mean?
Right, and he doesn't have a heal, so he sacrifices sustain.
Yeah, it's not a targeted ability; it's a skill shot. So you're you're kind of juking around, waiting for Blitz to grab, and as soon as he grabs, you have 10 seconds to go do whatever you want because he's not scary anymore. But Taric and maybe Leona would be the other one, where Leona is a skill shot, but it's got a really large range, width-wise. So if she lands it anywhere around you, it's going to pull her to you and actually stun you with an auto attack. Uh-huh. She has the same kind of zoning potential as Taric. She's really, really tanky, adds a ton of utility. She actually has more CC than Taric does. And you couple them with someone like you said, like Graves, for example. Quirky, maybe, once he gets some items.
Yeah.
But especially Graves, Like he's able to just dash, Q, ignite, ult, and like you just get completely annihilated. Especially if you're playing like a squishy support, Sona, Lux, something like that. And I mean his high win rate, his high pick rate, is just a testament to he's an easy champ to play. He's very successful. You're able to lock down with that stun carries in the fight. You're able to catch people that are out of position. He's just super strong, and he can be played with any variety of AD carries. He's just very safe. He can be very aggressive. He can play whatever he wants. He can sit in the bush and automatically zone you. Jungles are reluctant to gank him if he hasn't blown his stun because they know they're going to get hit. So it forces you to use your CC correctly. Overall, I mean, I don't know, great pick. Tarek's really good.
What do you think about like counter picks to Tarek? Since he's not banned and he's picked all the time, we definitely have to find some way to counter him for sure.
I mean, the counter to Tarek is to pick something that's equally as scary. Leona would be like the first thing that comes to mind, because Tarek, like good Tarek players, stay in front of their AD carry and know that if they haven't used their stun yet, they're automatically going to be able to zone the other team because they're scared to get stunned. Mm-hmm. And so the only way to kind of counter that is to pick an equally scary support that can also stand right in front of their AD carry and know that if Tarek initiates, they have enough to turn that fight around for them. So like Leona, for example, actually packs more CC than Tarek does.
Right.
So she can stun with an auto attack. She has a ranged, she has a gap closer that stuns for a second. And if she has ultimate, she can actually stun an entire party of people. And so if you want to if you're playing against a Tarek, you're playing against a Graves, you want to play an AD carry that can farm safely. Someone like Caitlyn, for example. Caitlyn beats a lot of those burst combos because she has long range, so she can actually whittle them down, whereas most bursty ADs have a short range. So she can actually get free harass in the entire laning phase. She can farm safely, even if Tarek's trying to zone her. She has a long enough auto attack. Tristana's the same way. That she can farm safely. If she does get initiated on, she's able to net away, or Tristana can jump. And then, I don't know, if you put them with like a Leona or something like that, and the Leona wants to be aggressive and actually engage on the other team, they have just enough burst to kill them as well.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Tristana with the jump, I think is definitely a good AD carry to kind of counter Tarek. You can stay a safe distance because as you know, I'm not really a big fan of Kate, but Tristana definitely there. At least from my perspective, I can definitely see that, and I think Leona is probably the scariest counter pick to Tarek, just because I don't think there's anything else that has that same sort of zoning potential. Like you said with Blitzcrank, it's very similar. But after he's blown his grab, you kind of have free reign for a little bit to run around and play aggressive.
Well, at the same token too, I mean, really, if you want to live the lane, pick a tanky support. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that automatically makes him so much easier because they're just going to be reluctant to engage on you anyways. Because if your AD carry's smart and able to position correctly, you're too tanky for them to burst. So like if you're playing against a Tarek, don't pick Sona or Zyra, which I like to do, but don't do it.
You'll get destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get destroyed by a good Tarek. But at the same time, if you want to beat him, pick somebody tanky. They can dish out just as much CC. They can take the hits. And pick an AD carry that has a gap closer so that they can actually disengage if they need to. But then also they can get a lot of harass in there as well. So like Nunu's a good choice against Tarek because he gives a big attack speed steroid to the AD. So that automatically makes the trades, if they have a long enough range, they can actually harass easier, they can farm faster, things like that. Nunu has a heal in case he does get engaged on and doesn't die. But the biggest thing is his Ice Ball will slow the Tarek. So a lot of times you can see, because Tarek's stun's actually a relatively short range, Tarek will run at the AD or run at you and try to get a stun off. And you're able to throw an Ice Blast, which has about the same range, and slow the Tarek down, so he actually can't get in range for your AD carry to stun.
Right.
So he's super safe. He can control the bush very well. The other one would be Thresh. I've seen a lot of Threshes now.
Oh, we remembered his name.
Right.
He's not the ghostly fella.
The ghostly fella. Thresh is sexy. I mean, if you suck with him, you suck with him. He's terrible.
Yeah.
Like me. But if you're good with Thresh, like Thresh can do all kinds of nasty things. one of the biggest ones, it makes it very hard to turret dive a Thresh and his AD carry. He can just drop ultimate. It like slows everybody. He has a knockback. He has a pull. So he has a zoning potential of Blitzcrank, but you don't want to engage on him because he's got a lot of peel. This champ is like designed to be a support.
Yeah.
And you know he's super nasty.
Lantern teleport, man, it's insane.
Oh
like,
yeah.
I can't even believe that's an actual ability. You're giving your carry a free flash essentially. It's so crazy.
Double
and
flash if you.
Yeah.
I mean. Yeah.
And his auto attacks being like ranged, and they like chunk people too. Like for a support, they hit hard, man.
Oh yeah, and with his passive, he gains armor in lane. So Thresh is just a nasty support. If you want to get good with a support, he can be aggressive, he can be defensive, he can set up kills for his team, he can protect your team from being dove on. Like he can do all kinds of stuff. I think he does have a higher skill cap because his grab is a little tricky to use because it has a wind up timer. It's not like Blitz where you can just pop it off real fast. But I mean, he's got every trick in the book that a support would want, with the exception of a heal. And if you want to pick someone up that can combat a Taric or can combat really any support in the lane, like Thresh is absolutely who I would recommend.
Fun to play too.
Yeah, he's fun. I don't know. I'm terrible with grabs, so I stick with it.
It's definitely embarrassing whiffing things. You remember that one Blitzcrank game? Oh my gosh.
Oh,
it's so bad. It's the worst feeling in the world. But going on to like some more like really good champs. You've been playing a lot of Lux lately, and I've been seeing a lot of Lux and solo queue here lately too. Why do you think that is?
Well, she's being played in all the major tournaments right now. You know, IEM and all the LCS tournaments. Like Lux has been really popular, which automatically trickles down the elo tree, and everyone starts playing her. But she's actually really strong. She's got a lot of zoning potential. She has high burst. She has really long range, which is her downfall is she's very squishy. So if you play Assassin's Mid or something like that, you can completely destroy her. But a really good Lux will never let you get close to her. And I mean that's using your bindings correctly. Her shield is super underrated. It gives like 2 shields to people. Like you can shield your entire team. Line up a laser late game. That laser's on like a 26-second cooldown, and it's doing like 900 damage. You know what I mean? Which is just retarded. Like you can steal buffs with that. From middle, you can steal. You steal Barons, Dragons, blue buff, red buff. You can push creep waves. You can just harass before a team fight. That automatically makes the other team not want to engage on you and actually disengage. And then your team can push in and win. And halfway through that fight, your ult's up again. And if this is what Lux specializes in, is like dropping a bunch of wards, waiting for the other team to overextend or walk onto your ward. And you throw your cage, you throw your AoE, and you pop an ult, and they're completely annihilated. And that can instantly make it a 3v5 or a 4v5 for those of you that saw Suche do that a couple weeks ago. It's just completely nasty. I mean, she's just got she scales very hard into the late game. Kind of a week early, which is my beef with her. Like, I don't know. I like people that can, like, skill shot bursty mages, so she's right up my alley. But she has trouble if she's not fed and gets a lot of AP early. She has trouble pushing the wave with, like, one button, which is unfortunately what I like to do. But I mean, she's just really safe. She can be really aggressive. She's just constantly scary.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing with her is just the fact that, especially early on, she has such long cooldowns. So I feel like there's a lot of blank time where I'm not doing much, and I guess her passive kind of makes up for that, because you can throw it in auto attack and still do quite a bit of damage in between each spell. But she's definitely very powerful. I mean, having a snare that can potentially hit 2 people. It chunks people. Her luminosity ball thing, which I don't know the name of, I'm sorry.
I don't either.
Glowy ghost ball. It illuminates that part of the map, so it prevents infamous face checking and solo queue. It slows people down. It chunks people. And the laser thing is what's most interesting to me, because on really good Lux players, her presence is absolutely terrifying. Because she's just got a sidestep in her lane, and she can reach with her ult to either top or bottom. And that's absolutely devastating, because all of a sudden you have this assisted gank, and it happened in a matter of seconds. There's no time to respond to that at all. If you go in for a gank and you know that you're playing with a good Lux, you can ping top, you start to get them low, and even if the trade isn't going in your favor, you just sit there and make it look like you're dumb by not trying to juke their moves or move at all. And the Lux will have, a perfect lineup to be able to hit them and either get the kill or put the trade in your favor. And that's absolutely terrifying. That and the combined ability, like you were saying, like a 24-second cooldown late game, being able to do Baron stills, Dragon stills, like a really good Lux can do it every time. It's just amazing. And if you hit it in a team fight, with such a low cooldown, like you're using your poke, you can get a couple of ults off, and all of a sudden the other team isn't going to want to fight anymore. You can completely shut down momentum with her ult alone, and that's just amazing to me. I don't think there's another ult in the game that has that much of an impact.
Yeah, and I think people that can land skill shots, like take advantage of some of these skill shot people because they typically have really high damage with low cooldowns because it's skill shot. And if you're able to land those skill shots, you can absolutely abuse these champions. And Lux, I mean, she's easy to counter in the same sense. Like if you play Akali, or if you play Kassadin, or Talon, or any of these people, like if a Lux misses her binding, she's dead, 100%. So if you have the ability to predict where she's going to bind and dodge it, then she's all yours. And you can absolutely destroy Lux. And if she doesn't have items, then she's not doing very much damage. She has high mana costs. If she doesn't have blue, she cannot spam in lane, and she just gets completely crushed. And so for those of you that are, because she's played in many, many, many games, play assassins against her. Play some AD bruisers against her. Because if Lux can't burst you, she blows her kit, then she has to back. People like Pantheon, for example. Like the Panth lane can go either way, but you want to crush Lux level 1 through 5 before she gets her ult, and she's able to farm safely and roam and things like that. She's very, very squishy, so if you're just spear harassing her all the time, or you manage to stun her, like you can absolutely obliterate her. And that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, and I think if you're playing Lux and you happen to be unfortunate enough to play against one of these assassins that we're talking about, you're really going to be reliant on your jungle here, and potentially top roaming as well. Because like Dinks was saying, in these kind of scenarios, it's really easy to be completely shut down and not be able to farm if they get you in that 1 to 5 phase where she's pretty weak. So just be really reliant on your jungle. Make sure to stress the point that you have to have blue in order to be able to spam your spells. And if you're still losing, make top aware so that they can come down. And one of the biggest things to remember in solo queue, and this kind of goes to every lane, junglers, top, mid, any lane, is that, you don't always have to make it your mission for your jungler to get you a successful kill. Just simply pushing them out of lane, to me, is good enough, because now all of a sudden you've got a farm lead. They might have potentially blown summoners, and that's all worth it, just having jungle presence. Don't make your jungle feel like he's forced to get kills for you, because forcing anything is where mistakes start to get made. You put pressure on them, they start to get stressed, they feel like they need to get a kill to prove themselves. Just be understanding and take whatever you can get from a jungler's gank. Summoner spells, making them back so you can get more farm, hits on the turret, because inevitably the turret is your objective. This game isn't about killing people, it's about destroying buildings. Which is completely crazy, I know, but that is the objective, and that's what you should focus on.
Yep, absolutely agree. So yeah, and the other champion I wanted to talk about too was Tristana, which I think we kind of touched on a little bit earlier with how she is with Blade of the Rune King and things, and I wanted to just make a quick note and say that those of you that want to play with Tristana but are scared you're gonna get bashed for playing her. Definitely do, because her pick rate's gone up and her win percentage has gone up, and Blade of the Rune King was ludicrous on her. And same for Caitlyn. Caitlyn's been picked for a long time, especially coupled with Nunu bottom. These sort of safer laners. We're always advocating safe laners. If you're worried about getting counterpicked, or you're worried about, you want to pick a champ that you never play because some website said it countered them. Don't worry about it. Like, play a champ you're comfortable with. Get comfortable with these long range AD carries or AP mids or whatever, and use that early game to farm and don't always try to go for these engages and get killed. On that same vein, the other AD we wanted to talk about real quick was Draven. I know you were talking about him earlier, because he's one of those ADs that you don't have to rush Blade of the Rune King on, because Draven's a little bit different. Like he can duel anyone really and win without, just hands down. He doesn't rely on a lot of attack speed really. He has steroids of his own, and if he just lands, 2 or 3 of these juggled axes, like you just get completely annihilated by him.
Oh yeah, you get 100% chunked. And I think the biggest thing why he's so different in his build pathing is because of his passive. Anytime that he crits, you get the bleed effect on them, and that bleed is extremely powerful. It's basically like an ignite. And if you pick up something like Infinity's Edge and Phantom Dancer, you're attacking really fast, you're critting all the time, so your target's constantly bleeding. Now, mind you that he does have a pretty high skill cap because catching axes kind of disrupts the norm for laning because you're kind of moving in random directions you wouldn't necessarily move in. And that move path is pretty predictable because people can see where the axes are going to fall. But the thing that makes him so scary is that if you're really close to him, the axe will pretty much always bounce back to him, and that allows him to spam his attack speed steroid, his W. Every single time he catches it lowers the cooldown, and he can essentially spam that on you, and all of a sudden he's got lots of attack speed, you're bleeding from being crit, and combine that with a CC heavy support, you're going to be knocked out of the game, no doubt. I would say don't ever try to duel a Draven unless you're pretty far ahead.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. We like to bring up some counter picks for some of these champs that we bring up. Draven is really, I feel, in my opinion anyways, it comes down to the support, like if you want to counter pick a Draven, because you can't duel him. So, you don't have an AD that you can pick that can 1v1 Draven and win. Assuming the other Draven can catch his axes and, plays the champ correctly. And so if you are, if you're in queue and you see other team pick a Draven, again, back to those tanky supports, like that's what you want to get. You want to get something that can zone him simply because you're too tanky for him to kill and you're packed with enough CC that your AD can capitalize on him getting caught. And if that didn't make any sense to you, that means that if you're playing against like Draven Taric, for example, right? This is like the ultimate kill lane.
It's gross.
Yeah, if you get stunned by Taric, you will die. How do you counter that? Well, you pick a safe AD carry like Caitlyn or Tristana to farm from really far away that has a disengage in case you get engaged upon. Let's say you're playing support and your AD carry picks something that they shouldn't have. Like, I don't know, Varus or something.
Or Graves probably.
Or a Graves. Graves probably be the worst. Yeah, I mean, he has a dash, but still. So if Graves, let's say, and you're forced to pick a support, go with those tankier supports. Get something that can zone the Draven that forces him to like mentally just not want to engage upon you. Get something like we were talking about, like Leona or a Nunu or a Thresh. Thresh is probably the best one right now. And really you want to survive. You want to farm the lane and survive as long as you can. Wait on your jungle to gank. Hopefully he does, because if you can shut down Draven and manage him in the team fights, then you have no problem with him. But if you allow him to get big, then good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can kind of attest to the whole Kate or Tristana being a good counter pick to Draven, because just yesterday, actually, I was playing a solo queue game with Dinks, and I was playing Draven with a Taric bottom. And the Taric didn't do too well. He didn't really understand zoning. But, the biggest thing was that if I went in for a last hit or went in to harass, Kate could auto-attack me before I could get to her. So she was getting off these free attacks, free harass, which is like really frustrating for both you and the support, because you're essentially taking damage for no reason, but you're kind of forced to if you want to play the lane. It can definitely be very frustrating. And something that I kind of wanted to mention, I'm not sure how well this would work, but I feel like the only AD carry bot that would be able to contest with Draven's damage would be Vayne. What do you think about that? It's scary because you got to get close, but her burst is insanely high.
Yeah, I think Draven wins hands down.
Yeah, early for sure.
But I think post 6, I think you're right. Like once a Vayne gets like a PD, Phantom Dancer, she has the attack speed and she pops ult. I think it really comes down if she can land her stun, because her ability to like they both have move speed steroid, right? So Draven might be able to knock her aside and get out before she can finish him. However, if Vayne is able to, that moment of stealthing, allows her to get an auto attack and Draven not to get an auto attack. So she could actually trade better, and if she lands the stun and manages to hit him into a wall or something like that, I think she'll definitely win, no problem.
Yeah, and kind of going into other things, this was kind of like random and improv, but we were talking about all these other great supports, but with Iron of the Solari, the Locket of Solari, becoming popular for its shield aspect and stats, I also think that the Janna is actually going to become a much higher percent played support bottom as well. With all these percent-based things, I feel like the shields are going to become very powerful. Riot just recently gave her a little bit of a buff. And she's got a pretty powerful kit, you know. I played her here recently, actually, and did really well. And I feel like the small amount of CC she does have, the knock-up from Tornado and the slow from her bird, is really good. And, of course, the shield giving extra AD to already strong hyper carries that we're seeing, pushes them over the edge. It's even crazier than it was before. And then her ult, being able to give her entire team sustain, I think her ult's amazing. To me, it's one of the most game-changing ults of any support.
Well, and just to simply put, the disengage too.
Right?
Oh, because Janna's one of those champs, and like Season 1 and Season 2, she was picked all the time. In fact, the Season 2, the skin that Riot gave for people that were like gold and higher or whatever was a Janna skin. She was like very, very high picked, and like competitive play, you would see Janna's all the time, because if you're on the defensive, like she can defend turret, she can defend her AD just fine. If you try to dive her, she can ult, tornado slow. She has a lot of ways of getting out of it. But at the same time, if you want to be aggressive, she can utilize all those abilities to set up kills for the jungler or for the AD. And I think you're absolutely right. I think shields are going to be really strong. The extra AD from that is just a bonus. She has a little bit of sustain with her ult. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. And then the other thing I was going to say too is I see a lot of AD carries instead of taking like Ignite or Cleanse, they're taking Barrier.
Yeah, Barrier.
And Barrier's like ludicrously strong. And there's a couple situations where you can still take Ignite, you definitely want to take Cleanse, right? That's the other thing I want to note is if you guys are playing against those tankier supports we were telling you, the sort of lock and load, blow you up before you can do anything supports, Leona, Taric, things like that, picking up Cleanse is absolutely a great idea for the AD carries. However, if you want to take something like Ignite, it works in some situations. If you're playing that kill comp, if you're playing like Graves Taric, you want to take Ignite, because they'll be CC'd before they can Barrier, then it works out. However, for those of you worried about being bursted by champs like Draven or something like that, Barrier is very, very good. It's not a heal, so Ignite doesn't affect it. It completely counters Ignite, in my opinion, for that reason. It has a lower cooldown, I'm pretty sure. And, it's, I don't know, it's just like it goes back to that shield thing. It's like it's very strong, and if you're playing AD carry and you're wondering, like, what should I take here? Do I want to go kill lane? Do I want to play a little defensively? Barrier's a great way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing with Barrier is if they have a lot of assassins on their team, such as Akali and things like that, it'll also save you and give your bruisers and team a little bit more time to kind of help heal off you.
Yep, absolutely. And it will survive a little bit longer with, you have the AD carries that we've been losing to anyways, take the Barrier in lane, and they focus on their farm, and they get Blade of the Rune King, so it's like, it's harder for them. They use the activate on the Blade of the Rune King. They're smashing these tanks and bruisers that are trying to stick to them. They gain the move speed. They're very hard to catch. If you manage to catch them and they get low enough, they pop Barrier and get out. So, I mean, really, like I said, if you're playing AD carry, this is a great time to play them. There's a lot of things you can do that's not just in your champion kit, and it's not reliant on the items your support's buying to make you a very potent force the entire time.
Yeah, we're definitely back into the age of the AD carry again. I feel like the meta is going to shift away from bruisers and be more focused on hyper carries.
That's the other thing, too. I know we keep talking about Blade, but some of these bruisers I'm seeing, too, it's like bringing back, like, Aurelia.
Yeah.
Because you've pretty much been seeing a lot of the same, like, bruisers top. And then, the big nerf to Aurelia a couple months back, people stopped playing her. But, like, with Blade of the Rune King, I know Wicked was talking about it. Like, it opens up the avenue for a lot of these sort of random bruiser-esque characters that fell off. Like, when they coupled with Blade of the Rune King, a lot of them are very, very viable. Not that they weren't viable before, but they're just more potent now. And I definitely encourage you guys to try that out on, whatever champ you used to play you don't think is good anymore for whatever reason. Try try Blade King out on a lot of these top laners, and I think you'll be very pleased.
Yeah, it's definitely brought back a revival, which kind of goes into our solo queue progression there. What have you been playing lately?
I'm still Plat 3, because I've been trying to learn how to do videos. And so I've gotten only a couple games in this week, but I'm still Plat 3, and I've actually picked up Nidalee a lot. I played her a ton Season 1, and I play AP Nidalee. I don't like the bruisery Nidalee. Split push Nid, not as fun. But, I'm a spear thrower myself, so I've been taking her mid. Support a little bit, not a big fan. But top and mid especially. And you get wrecked by almost everybody in lane if they know how to dodge your spears. But just survive and farm and wait until team fights. And she is an absolute blast to play. I think her pick rate's actually really high. I was looking at some stats earlier. She's got less than a 50% win rate, but she's got a relatively high pick rate. And she's never banned. So, a lot of the games I've lost have been because of AP Nidalees that like to dash into Cougar too early and get completely stomped. So for those of you wanting to play AP Nid, go the hardcore AP route, go Lich Bane if you want to get a little extra damage or some split push power. And please, please, please stay in human form and spear, because, every 3 seconds or whatever it is, and you're doing like 1,300 damage to some unlucky soul, you're much more useful that way. Throw your heal on your AD carry, gives them a massive heal because your AP, gives them a huge attack speed steroid. We actually won a game because I kept healing this Vayne in our team fights, who was an awful player, but just the steroid combined with her ult was just nasty. The map awareness you get from traps lets your top lane quite well. If your top laner or the jungle ends up hitting that, you can chuck a spear at them. The resistances are lower, take a lot of damage. Just a lot of fun. Really mobile. I don't know. I like her.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to your whole Cougar jumping in sort of thing, I don't think there's a lot of people that know that in this most recent patch, Riot nerfed her passive defenses, her armor, her armor and MR that she got in Cougar form. They wanted to completely move away from that sort of tanky Cougar because it didn't feel right with her character. She's a Cougar, she's a huntress. She's supposed to kind of like sit in the back or hide in the shadows. She's not supposed to be like this thing that's like a big giant fat cat that's in front of your face the entire time. So I think AP Nidalee is definitely the way to go now, especially after the nerfs that she had to her defenses. And like Dinks was saying, stay in human form and poke, and then kind of use your Cougar form to clean up. Don't use it as your primary damage. There's plenty that you can do in human form. You've got your traps to lower their MR. You've got your spears, of course, which, by the way, is like I think my least favorite thing to be hit by in League. Like the sound and everything, it's just like, douche, and your health is gone. And you're like, what happened? And now I have to beat, and if I stay, I get hit by another spear, it's over. Oh man, it's so dirty. And the attack speed from the heal is amazing too, especially once you got a shit ton of AP. All of a sudden you're a support AP hybrid. And I know that's what you like to play too. You like to play those hidden carries. Because you're dirty.
I'm a dirty man. Yeah, and in that same vein too, if you guys wanted to play against Nidalee, I think Bruiser Nidalee is a little more annoying because they get, well, I won't say more annoying. They a different kind of annoying. If you're playing against like a melee farmer top, like if you guys like to play, I don't know, Wukong or something. Anyways, if you want to play something that's melee farming and you're playing against a tankier AD Nidalee, can be very annoying taking those auto attacks early because you can't trade with her. But they fall off late game, and I don't like to do that. I like to play champs that scale well. And I think AP is definitely more potent in that sense. But she gets crushed, guys, by like everything in lane. So if you're playing against AP Nid and you're like, oh, I just hate spears, well, learn to dodge them and don't get hit by them. Because if you do, yeah, you'll lose to her. But if you don't, she'll run herself trying to hit you with spears and play anything with CC or couple that with a jungler with CC, and it is super, super easy to kill Nidalee. And if she gets behind in any way, it's hard for her to catch up. Even though spears at max range is like 250% damage, which is a lot. If it hits an AD, even if she has no items, it's still going to hurt you. But you can cripple a Nidalee quite easily. You can play champs like Singed, for example. Singed bugs the hell out of all of us. but especially bugs Nidalee because he can just shove the lane, he can walk past turret, toss you, and you can't do anything but pounce away. Play something like Elise. Elise, if she manages to land her stun on Nidalee, she can absolutely combo her before she can get away. And Nidalee won't run cleanse. So, I mean, if you're able to CC her for just a second and burst her down or out-sustain her, you'll absolutely crush her. And the trick to beat her in team fights, because a lot of AP Nidalees will try and just survive the lane and they get the team fights and win the game because they're able to control these buffs so well with these spears, is to shove her lane. All right, so if you have an AP Nidalee top, let's say you completely wreck her, but their team is starting to win team fights because Nidalee's just roaming and throwing spears at things. Of course, tell your team what you're going to do, but push top. Force her back to lane to stop you. Because you know that she can't deal with you. So if you play Singe or something like that, just push and push and push and constantly pressure their turret. Force Nidalee back to you, away from the team, and let your team go and push and take objectives. And that's the way to beat her. And the alternate is don't play against Nidalee top and go and roam for your team too much because she can split push all day. You know, so she's very versatile. She's super annoying, but if you know how to play against her and do the things I'm telling you, then you can absolutely beat Nidalee, and she can be very useless if you counter her correctly.
Oh, yeah. And solo queue for me has been, I finally progressed into Gold 4 after failing my promo series twice.
Nice.
I've just had some like really nasty, toxic players in solo queue here lately. After getting into Gold 4, I just had this really, really bad loss streak, basically, because of the toxic players out there. You know, people are just being very unsupportive of everyone. You know, it just seems like the entire game's spent arguing, which is my biggest pet peeve with solo queue. But the champion that I've been picking up whenever I can't play Elise has been Rengar, actually. And I really, really like Rengar. I've liked him since release. He's had some very big ups and downs, and I know a lot of people right now think that he's a pretty terrible pick. But I beg to differ. Kind of like what Dinks was talking about earlier with Blade of the Ruined King changing champions up. That's exactly how I feel about Rengar. I still build very tanky early on so that I can win the laning phase with no problem. I max his little throwy trap thing. I'm bad. I don't know what it's called. But I maxed that out so basically I can go in and last hit, and whenever I go for those last hit, I throw that at them and it slows them, and it actually does a pretty decent amount of damage. And then I just start building health and defenses like Sunfire and Iron Locket of the Solari. And then as soon as I finish building those, I build Blade of the Ruined King. So now I'm like really, really farmed. I didn't lose my lane. I didn't feed or anything like that. It's really easy to escape with his bush jumping and his slow. You have good sustain with his roar. And by the time you get to team fights and you have Blade of the Ruined King, it's really easy to capitalize on jungle team fights because you can kind of jump around from bush to bush and get wherever you want. You don't have to worry about getting through the front line or anything like that. And once you get back to the AD carry and you're on top of him, you can just absolutely eat him. You can destroy him really, really quickly, and keep him slowed for your team. Another thing that goes really well if you build just straight tanky, because you can build straight AD also if you're snowballing, which I definitely recommend. A little bit more hybrid if you're just kind of farming. But another thing that he's really, really efficient at is going to be peeling. He's really amazing at it. You can stay with your AD carry, slow them, and Rengar can't be ignored, especially with that Blade of the Ruined King, because you're dealing all of this percent base damage to these bruisers. And then after Blade of the Ruined King, I usually continue to build more damage. So like just, 2 tanky items, the rest damage. So as the game progresses, I can really rip into these carries and bruisers. And so far, it's worked out really well. I like him a lot top lane. I like him a lot in jungle. Maxing his trap works really well for ganking. You can jump from the bushes. If you have max ferocity, you can throw your trap and slow them or snare them if you have max ferocity. And the other thing is roaming is amazing. You can basically gank from anywhere once you hit 6. You hit stealth, and it's a long stealth period. You can just kind of run around and plan exactly what you're going to do, and the lane that you're ganking has no idea what's going on. It's really dirty. I love it. It's fun, and I'll definitely continue to play him regardless of people thinking he's a terrible pick. I'm not going to let the toxic community control how I play League, especially if I'm having success. Freedom.
What about crazy games? Anything silly mode?
Oh yeah, so crazy games. I know in the last two podcasts we've been talking about how we want you to never give up, never surrender. You know, you need to be all in. It's a ranked game. You know, play it like it means something. And here recently, in this last week, I had a game as Janna where we lost both of our Nexus turrets before the 20-minute mark. And as we all know, that Nexus turrets being down pretty much means that the game's lost. You know, there's no coming back. But you know, we weren't gonna surrender. We went all in, and we ended up winning the game. 50-minute game, and we ended up winning. The way that we did it was we just made sure to keep our inhibitors up, keep things safe, and keep lanes pushed with wards throughout the jungle so that they couldn't secretly backdoor our base. And it was crazy that we were able to do that because they had a Twisted Fate on their team too. So, you know, you're thinking to yourself, oh, this is definitely a loss. We can't defend our Nexus. There's no way in hell this is going to happen. But we happened to pick up every single Baron. We pulled ourselves together, won team fights, and pulled it out of our hats. I'm actually going to be uploading this video because I think it's really good content for everyone to watch and see why it is that you don't surrender and you don't give up. So we'll be uploading that to our new YouTube channel here pretty soon as I figure out how the hell to edit it.
Yeah, that's been my life for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And on that, I want to just real quick with what Vast was saying. If I can give you like one bit of advice, no matter what your elo is, no matter like if you want to win the game, keep your lane shoved and keep your jungle warded. It's like those two things. People don't understand that this game is not about killing people. It really isn't. It is about taking objectives. And the way to do that, whether you're being super aggressive, you're being really defensive, you want to win, keep the lane shoved so the enemy team cannot group and you're not taking minion damage, your turrets are going crazy. Shove the lanes, keep them shoved, always. Ward your jungle and wait to pick somebody off. Because it will happen, I promise you. And if you're losing the game, that actually ups your chance of a comeback significantly because the other team's going to play super cocky. And they're going to... I'm not saying you'll win always, but you can absolutely your chance of catching someone goes up significantly when they're dominating you, because they'll split off. They don't really listen to each other. They all think they're the best player in the world. They're going to try and take their own turrets. They'll do really randy stuff, and don't ward deep if you're losing the game. Like ward in your jungle. Wait for them to encroach on you, and keep your lane shoved. Because if you keep your lane shoved, they're going to have to. It keeps them out of your jungle and out of your base because they're going to have to split up to push the lanes in to get turrets. So by doing that, you keep vision of them and you keep them split. So you're able to capitalize on like small fights. And communicating that to your team can be very, very difficult sometimes. But if you are able to show them like, look, this is what we need to do, where they already understand, you can absolutely turn games around just by doing those two things.
Yeah, don't all five sit mid and twiddle your thumbs. I see this happen. We were complaining about the other day. Oh my God! It's just like, what are we doing right now? We're not doing anything, and people do this when the lanes are not pushed. Like there's definitely things to be done here. It's not like we're waiting for something to happen. No, there's things already happening, and we need to address them. Ward your side of the jungle. Don't be a support who caps out on items and says, "I don't have inventory room for wards." Don't ever say that. That's the most terrible thing you can do.
Sell everything but boots.
Yeah.
Get boots 5 and 20 wards. Like I've done that numerous times and you can watch it. If you guys keep up with LCS, you watch these high level tournaments, these are the best players in the world fighting. The supports a lot of times don't have boots too by the end of the game. They don't. A lot of times, I think I watched it was like a 55-minute game the other day. Like crazy close, and the support literally had just boots, oracles, and a bunch of wards. And it's because vision wins you the game. You know, you're like, Zeke's is a great item and we need the health regen. Well, it doesn't if you're getting caught and obliterated. Like, priority always is to keep vision. And you can do that. What am I saying here? This is like my rant. All right, I'm going to stop ranting. But do that. You know, supports get wards. If you're not supporting, get wards. It doesn't matter. Get wards.
Help.
Yeah, help, always. And don't sit mid. This is like if you're losing... People tend to like let the side lane shove and group as 5 waiting for the other team to come at you. All you're doing is waiting to lose. Like you should always be moving. if you've played sports, like, you might understand what I'm saying. It's like, keep moving, farm your jungle. There's always creeps up. If there's not, there's lanes to be shoved. If there's not, there's things to be warded. If there's not, then you can congregate somewhere and you have a really high chance of winning that fight.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
Absolutely.
Do it. And also, what Vass said, our YouTube channel, the button is on the home page of the website. We have iTunes launched as well, and we're doing everything right now to make sure those podcasts are updated. I think the second one is still being processed. But the YouTube channel is linked. It is brand new, so we only have like a coming soon video on there right now. But starting this week, and hopefully with this podcast, actually, we're going to be uploading content to that YouTube channel. And a lot of it will be the podcasts themselves, which we're adding video and trying to make it more interactive. That was a lot of the feedback that we received from people. But also doing commentaries from a variety of ELOs, just to kind of show you what we're talking about and give some substance to the content that we're talking about. And so make sure you guys go on there, check out the YouTube channel, subscribe, like us, follow us on Twitter, give us feedback, please, on the website, because we receive more feedback each podcast that we've done, and that's really how we're shaping everything up. We're saying, oh, you want video? Okay, we'll do video. We're adding a poll to the homepage. We talked about it on the second podcast. We're still in the process of coding that, so that you guys can vote on champs for us to discuss every week. And we're really trying to make this thing happen and trying to get feedback from you guys. So please take part.
Yeah, and we're also going to be adding a champion guide section for me and Dinks and I's favorite champs. We'll have that champions tab up hopefully very soon. We're going to spend some time and make it an actual quality guide for you, and hopefully introduce some videos to our YouTube channel to kind of support those guys as well.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, any content that we haven't thought of, because it is just two of us that are doing this, and so we're racking our brains trying to think of things you like, things you don't like, and if you guys have ideas or stuff that you're not seeing on other websites that you would love to see, some kind of content you'd love to view every week, please email us, send us, go to that feedback page and write it out for us, and we will absolutely try to implement that. Everything is super infant stage right now. We're just trying to get as much content out as often as possible. And so, again, feedback, that's really what we want. If you guys say, oh, this is great, but you guys need to tweak this, write it to us so we can do that, and we'll absolutely take that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I think that is it for the podcast this week. Vasti, thanks for joining.
Yes, thanks for having me, good sir. Hopefully, or not hopefully, you guys will hear from us again next week. We're also talking about potentially doing 2 podcasts a week, so hopefully you'll hear from us more often as well.
Yep, absolutely. Well, see you guys in 1 week from now. Next Thursday, next Friday, we'll do the next podcast. Remember to like us, follow us, and subscribe.